Welcome back to My Hot Kitchen. I'm Wendy. Thanks for joining me again this week for another delicious idea to serve up to your sweetie on your next romantic date night at home. This week's menu is very delicious, very simple, very elegant. For dessert, we'll be having peanut butter love cups, and for an entree, soul spirals poached in a champagne sauce. So let's get started on those peanut butter love cups first. The first thing that you're going to want to do is grab some sort of bowl and put it over a pot of steaming water. To that, you're going to want to add about a half cup of chocolate chips and about a quarter cup of salted butter. You just want to work these two ingredients together over the heat until they've melted and become one. The steam will heat the dish that you're working in, and slowly and gently melt the chocolate and the butter together. But first of all, you're going to want to make sure they're not sticking to your spoon and that they have full contact with the bottom of the bowl. You can also do this in a traditional double boiler. I'm just demonstrating how you can duplicate that process using simple things that you find around a regular kitchen. So while the heat works on that, I'm going to pop back over here and start working on the egg. The egg is a very important element to this particular recipe as there's no leavening. So you're depending entirely on the egg and its ability to poof up a pastry to make this sucker rise. So take your egg and whisk it together very well. You want to almost double it in volume. You can see how it's pouring off in one stream, slightly broken. The egg is nearly doubled in volume. That's just perfect. Let's turn our attention back to the chocolate. Oh, that's very nice right there. Got the chocolate all liquefied, and the butter's going to come right along with it. So I'm going to take it off the heat and allow the residual heat that is stored in the bowl to do the rest of the melting work. Stir it together until I have an almost smooth consistency. At that point, I'm going to need to add about a third cup of lightly packed brown sugar. Allow it to stir in and dissolve and get all good and happy in there with the chocolate and the butter. Mix it until there's no more lumps. And allow it to cool down before you proceed to the next step. So there's two more components to this that you can work on while you wait for that chocolate mix to cool down. There's the peanut butter filling. You can't forget that. You're going to need about 1/8 of a cup of peanut butter and about a tablespoon of more brown sugar. And add just a couple little scoops of the egg that you whipped up. It's going to help to stretch out the peanut butter, make it a little bit more workable. And just blend all this goodness together. This is going to form the filling that goes in the peanut butter love cups. Again, blend it until you have a smooth consistency. That'll do the trick right there. And now let's start working with the puff pastry. Of course, puff pastry, as you might know, is something that I just love to work with. It's what I call a kitchen genie because it just makes a simple, elegant dessert with minimal effort. So I just sprinkled a little flour on the surface of the puff pastry. Now I'm peeling this parchment paper off the back of it. There we go. And I'm going to need to sprinkle a little more flour in order to prevent it from sticking. The main thing that I need to do right now is just stretch it out and make it a consistent size and thickness. So I'm going to use my rolling pin and a nice light touch, maybe a little more flour because this one seems to be kind of sticky and grabby. And just work it out just a little bit. go, that'll do the trick right there. And now I'm going to take a nice large cookie cutter here, and I'm going to cut out about 6 little crusts. You'll note that I'm rocking it back and forth quite a bit, and that is because the puff pastry has a tendency to not cut well. But if you just add a little rocking motion to it, it works fantastic. Now, of course, puff pastry can always be found in your local grocery store in the freezer section, but I would also encourage you to look around at local bakeries. You might be surprised. Some of them may have a delicious puff pastry that they sell. And that is where I found this one. It was at a local bakery. And it's so delicious. Now I'm going to take these cute little crusts and work them into my muffin tin. Kind of stretch them and ease them in there. Depending on the size of your muffin tin, you're going to want to choose your cutter carefully so that your crust can fill it up as best as possible. Recognizing that, of course, if it's not perfect, that's fine. It's just going to add more character and deliciousness to each little peanut butter love cup. And one more to go. I'm not going to worry too much about the edges at this moment because I'm going to add fillings to these, which is going to add weight and allow me to stretch them to the shape that I like. Now, as far as the scraps go, don't despair because they still have life. You can squeeze them together, roll them out again, sprinkle a little cinnamon sugar on them, twist them up, and you've got some little twisty, yummy, cinnamony things. Or you can save them and make a really big batch of something yummy with all the scraps that you've accumulated later. So let's finish off the brownie batter next. So it's cooled down to a reasonable level now. So the next thing to add in is going to be the egg. Get that all in there, scrape out the bowl, get all the good stuff out of the bowl into the brownie batter. Fold it in. And just when you start to see it sort of marble together, you can go ahead and add in your ½ cup of all-purpose flour. And for this recipe, it doesn't really matter whether it's sifted or not. Fold these gently together. You want to fold gently because you want to keep those eggs nice and puffy in there. You can see with each pass of the spoon or spatula that it's going to mix together. Stop mixing once you see all the flour disappear into the batter. Right about there. And now you want to take a little scoop. I'm not quite filling this little scoop that I have right here. I'm going to plop most of it in there. Right on top of the puff pastry. Now I'm going to take this opportunity to sort of stretch the puff pastry up the walls of the muffin tins and perfect the presentation of the crusts a little bit. Because with the weight of the brownie in there, I'm going to get a much better result than if I had tried to do this before I added any filling. Now with that step done, we can go ahead and add in the delicious peanut butter insides. Now it really seems to be pretty easy just to do this with your fingers. Reach in there, grab a little bit of peanut butter, wedge it into the chocolate, and there you go. Just nestle it in there, make it all nice and happy. You know peanut butter and chocolate are good friends. Try to make sure that the brownie batter, the chocolate, completely encompasses the peanut butter. And then simply add a little bit more of the brownie batter on top to cover up the peanut butter. So it's like a little surprise when your sweetie bites into it. It doesn't take much to do this step. Nice little dose. These are gonna taste so good. Homemade peanut butter love cups. And one little baker's tip, you'll note that I have some unfilled muffin wells, so I'm just gonna add a little water to that because that's gonna help prevent my pan from warping. And goodness knows that I don't want a warped pan, neither do you. So I have my oven preset to 350 degrees, and I'm gonna bake these for about 35 minutes. The puff pastry needs quite a bit of time to come into its own. And in addition, the bottom of the brownies will need a little bit of time to finish up and set. They're gonna be amazing. Well, let's see if these little peanut butter love cups are ready to go. They sure smell good. And they sure look good. But the best test to know whether your peanut butter love cups are done is to take a toothpick and stick it all the way down into the bottom. And what you want to see is just some crumbs, maybe, but absolutely no shiny goopy stuff in the middle. These are done. They'll be happy to cool there in the pan for a little bit. So let's get started on the main event, the soul spirals poached in champagne sauce. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is prepare the soul spirals. Now for this particular dish, I recommend using an entire fillet of sole for each serving. It's going to be about 3/4 pound, and it's going to taste delicious. So start by sort of folding down this extra little flap to make one smooth line that's a little thicker on one side than the other. And then take some greens. I have some baby green leaf and some baby romaine. You can also use spinach if you like, and layer it on the fish. Another important thing to note is that you want the skin side on the inside of the roll. It just seems to help it all stick better. And these little greens are going to add a nice little texture and a nice little bit of color. The next thing to do is take a little prosciutto. I love prosciutto with fish. It's so salty and so pungent that its flavor just shines right through, and it just enhances a delicious fresh fillet. Now, I'm just going to use one slice because it is so potent, and I'm just going to layer it in over the sole. I'm going to work on the thinner side that's on the top because that's going to form the top of the roll, and I want to see the prosciutto sort of poking through a little bit. So I'm actually going to go ahead and turn those little leafy things around as well. So those come out on top too. A little bit more of that yummy, salty, pungent prosciutto. And another ingredient to add is going to be about 2 asparagus tips. And you just want to break them off so that only the beautiful little flowered ends show through. Place them about 1 inch or so in from the edge. And then take the sole and start rolling it up. Use your thumbs and fingers to compress the fillings as you roll, and work to keep the bottom on a nice, flat, even level. Once you get it all rolled around, it's going to look about like that. Stuff a little toothpick in there to keep it from falling apart, and then work on the other one. You're really going to like the way that all these ingredients work together, and it's really going to come together with the champagne sauce. This is going to be a winner. Go, that one will hold together nicely now too. Now I'm going to go over here to my saute pan, and start building the foundation of the delicious champagne sauce. I'm gonna need a little touch of olive oil. You can also use butter if you prefer. And maybe 2 cloves of garlic, kind of coarsely chopped. I've got my pan on very low heat here because that is the secret of a successful poach, is nice low heat. I'm gonna add a couple slices of red onion, and I'm gonna give that just a moment to soften up. These are starting to come up temperature now. We're getting a nice little sizzle going on in there. I'm gonna give them a little toss here. Get that olive oil all infused with the onion and garlic flavor. I'm just looking for a slight softening, not so much a cooking. So I'm gonna go ahead and add the mushrooms at this point. Let them get in on the action too. Saute it together for about 1 to 3 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next step. This is just at the perfect point. So what I mean when I say softening up is that we've not necessarily cooked anything, but you can see that the onions are starting to easily flatten out and yield to different shapes, which they weren't doing when they were fresh cut. So now we're moving on to the next step. I'm gonna squeeze a little bit of lime in there. You can also use lemon if that's what you have sitting around the house. A couple squeezes worth of that good stuff. Activate those flavors. Next thing we're gonna do is actually bring in the fish. So I'm gonna just plop one of those bad boys in there. Again, keeping the temperature on a nice low temperature. Poaching is a gentle process. Next thing to add is gonna be about a 1/2 cup of fish stock or vegetable stock if that's what you have on hand. And that's my concentrate, and about a 1/2 cup of water. Flush it out. And about a 1/2 cup of champagne. A couple more ingredients to add into this. This is quite the sauce. You're gonna need a dried pepper. You're just gonna wanna reach in there really quick before you put it into the sauce and scoop the seeds out, kind of break it up. This isn't gonna be something that you serve, but it's an important element to the flavor. Try to remove as many of the seeds and the stem as you can, but don't get too fussy about it. Next thing to add are some aromatics. We have a little bit of parsley, some nice fresh leaves. You can also use about a 1/2 teaspoon of dried. I have about a 1/4 teaspoon of dill weed. I'm gonna sprinkle that in a little bit on top of the fish. Just a few little coriander seeds. These are very potent. A little bit goes a long ways. And if you're feeling really fancy, some saffron threads. Of course, you can always substitute turmeric or paprika for the saffron threads if you don't have those sitting around. Finally, another squeeze of lime on top of each fish. This is fish, and citrus is just going to help to enhance the flavors. And then bring this up to a nice low simmer as you put a lid on it. Let's take a little look here. Oh, that's a nice little simmer. It's very good. Now, one thing that you want to do after the fish has come up to temperature is hit it with a nice amount of salt and pepper. Apart from the prosciutto, there really isn't any good source of seasoning as far as the old classic salt and pepper goes. So you want to love up the champagne sauce a little bit like that. And also at this point, you're going to want to add in the rest of your pound of asparagus. Just simply break off the spears and drop them in on top. The poaching liquid will do the rest of the work for you. Put the lid back on and cook it until this fish is flaky and done. Well, this looks fun. Smells great. Let's just give the fish a little poke here and see if it's nice and flaky. Oh yes, comes right apart. Need to get these out of the pan right now. So I'm going to support them with a little spatula underneath them and a little pinch of the tongs around them. I'm just going to scoot them on over here and plop them in the middle of the dinner plate. Again, a little support underneath, a little support around the outside. And there we go. Now let's finish up this sauce after we get the asparagus out. And I need to get it out of the pan so that I can finish off the champagne sauce. Also going to pull out at this time any little bits of the pepper. That's great right there. So 2 final touches. You're going to need a bit of a thickener. So take a little bit of champagne and stir it into about a ½ tablespoon of cornstarch until you have a nice little slurry. You want to see something free of any lumps, and incidentally the bubbles in the champagne are going to help that happen at a very expedited rate. Once you have that all mixed together, go ahead and pour it into the sauce. Crank the heat up and bubble it. You want to see that cook down just a touch, and you want the heat to activate the cornstarch and thicken the sauce for you. So we are seeing the bubbles come up from the heat being turned up. We're starting to see the liquid thicken up as it's cooking off. We have 2 factors working for us here to make the sauce incredible. Well, besides all the amazing flavors you put in it. The evaporation of the water will thicken the sauce. And of course, like I said, the cornstarch is going to do its thing too. Just need to do this for a few minutes until you've got a nice consistency. There we go, it's all cooked down. It's looking great. Let's give it a little taste and check it for its seasonings. Little bit of heaven right there. That's very nice. Now the final touch is to, of course, adjust the seasonings to your taste. Take the sauce off the heat and then stir a little butter, about a tablespoon or so into it. It's just going to add a nice little shine and really help to round off those flavors. And with the heat of the sauce, that butter is going to melt in no time flat. And then take the sauce and drizzle it around the fish. A nice little circle. Get a little on the fish too. It likes the sauce very much. And for a nice accompaniment to this very simple and elegant meal, a couple nice wedges of cheesy garlic toast. And let's not forget about the asparagus spears. You know the fish definitely wants that on the plate next to it. Frame it in up here. Beautiful. And there you go, a nice little seafood dinner to share with your sweetie on your date night at home. Little soul spirals poached in a delicious champagne sauce, and of course, don't forget about the dessert, the peanut butter love cups. Your sweetie's really gonna like those. So pair this simple, elegant meal with a nice champagne and call in your sweetie. Apron, be gone.
Wow, look at that. Wow, how did you do that?
Magic.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Thank you. So we got a little soul spiral.
This is amazing.
I don't think I've made something like this for you before, but this is yummy.
Oh, it just comes right apart.
Poached and delicate like.
That is simply amazing.
That's really
This is such a hot kitchen.
good. So thanks for joining me in my hot kitchen tonight. Have fun turning up the heat in your kitchen. And I'll see you next week. Night night. Pet the kitties.